Hello, Lydia. Thank you so much for joining me on the Well Vegan Travel podcast today.
Thank you for having me.
I am really pleased to have you on the podcast because you're going to be talking about your vegan accommodation, which happens to be in one of the most beautiful parts of the world, close to me, but also not close to me because it's in another country. You're based in the San Juan Islands, and we'll talk all about that. But before we get into all of that, Lydia, why don't you tell us a little bit about what it is that you do in the vegan travel space?
Sure, I'd love to. We created and run Pebble Cove Farm in an animal sanctuary on Orcas Island, which is one of the San Juan Islands, the cluster of islands north of Seattle. So we're on the northern coast of Washington, very close to the Canadian border.
And how is it that you have this beautiful place?
Well, my husband and I are LA suburban kids. When we were in our 20s, after we got married, we both discovered we had fantasies about living in the country and having animals and a garden. So we quit our jobs, sold everything, bought a VW camper van, and mapped out to travel around the country as long as it took to find the perfect place. This was before the internet. This is the early 90s, like 91. So I had a file that I'd been cutting newspaper clippings and magazine clippings and Martha Stewart and Sunset Magazine and travel. So I had a file. I was very attached to being near the water. I have to look at the water. So we figured the West Coast, the East Coast, even the South we considered. So we went on this journey and traveled up the coast where looked at tons of real estate, just looking for something that just like spoke to us. We had heard of the San Juan Islands, but you take a ferry there, and that seemed very remote. We went because we knew they were supposed to be beautiful, but we didn't have an expectation. We kind of put our search for the perfect home aside and just thought we'll enjoy that. We went to all of the 4 islands that I'll talk later about the ferry goes to. But Orcas, we spent one day and one night, and there was just this gut feeling both of us had. There was something about the island. We left, we continued our journey, and it kept kind of building and building. One of the things planned was on the East Coast, where I had gone to college. We were making a pilgrimage to Helen Nearing. Do you know Scott and Helen Nearing? Oh, I have their book, The Good Life, Scott and Helen Nearing, and they're considered the great grandparents of the Back to the Land movement. So in the 30s, he was a professor. They were radicals, socialists, pacifists, activists. He was fired from college, his teaching, and they moved to a farm on the coast of Maine. And they set up this kind of the way to live, this utopian farmstead where you work, you profit from your land, you don't exploit anything. They, at the time in the 30s, were vegan. They didn't believe in
Really?
having pets. They didn't believe in using animals,
Wow,
even
I've
in the
never heard
farming.
that.
It was really radical. And young kids from all over the country went and lived there, and you could show up and they'd put you to work. It's fascinating, and it's a great read. And they were super inspiring to us. And she was still alive. So on the journey, we did visit her, which was really wonderful. Tough woman. She was in her 90s. And I remember she had a tank top and like muscles and biceps. It was just very cool. These were tough, hardy, stoic New Englanders. In any case, that was just a really fun thing to see her. So we continued traveling and we kept thinking about Orcas. So we took about a year and we said, let's just go. It'll be fun. It'll be an adventure. Well, that was over 30 years ago. So that's how we ended up on Orcas Island. So I always say, I've done the research. This is a very special place.
Yeah, I have been to Orcas Island before, maybe about 10 years or so now. It is really a very beautiful part of the world. Before we dig into all of that even more, what led you to buy this particular piece of property and land, first of all, and how did this inn or a bed and breakfast or accommodations come to be?
Well, we moved here 30 years ago. We bought a little cabin and we bought ducks for the first time and dug a pond and we planted a garden. Neither one of us had ever grown anything from the ground. And it was really wonderful. We started having goats. About 20 years ago, I saw this property and it was abandoned, derelict property, 4 acres right on the water on this beautiful little cove with pebbles. So that's where the name came from. I just fell in love with it. It had a big barn with raccoons living there and it just needed love. No one had touched it in years. My husband, John, is a builder.
That is
He looked
very
at it.
handy.
It's very handy. Whenever he drives me crazy, I'm like, yeah, that's in the pro column. So he transformed the barn. We fell in love with it and we decided to just transform it. We had 3 little boys at this time and we wanted to live there. So as he renovated the barn, we put in an orchard, we put in the garden, we put in a corral, and we had some animals. We moved and then we started adopting more. And it was a big structure. We started thinking, this is such a sweet spot. And one family shouldn't live. It's so wonderful. And we really wanted to share it. And we realized there was so much room. So we put in some suites with little kitchenettes in the lower part of the barn. And John built a few cottages. And we're like, oh, we could rent this out and it would supplement our income and we could share this. It was very organic. It wasn't our mission, although it was always kind of a fantasy, I have to be honest. That's how it evolved. The garden was something very important to us because we really wanted people to see what it was like to pull up a carrot, pull up a radish, pluck a pea. All our accommodations have kitchenettes, so guests can pick from, we put a chalkboard sign of what's ripe. There's baskets and they can pick whatever's ripe in the garden and come home to their little suite and prepare meals. That was important to us, that it was organic. We would take the compost from the animals that ended up in the garden. We wanted people to see how sustainability is possible. It's not really tricky. We didn't know anything. We learned all this as we went along. Then as we were adopting animals from rescue farms, animal sanctuaries, we have some farms on the island and we would adopt maybe a runt or an animal and they would call us. It evolved. What was very important to us is that we felt as guests play with the animals, pet the pigs, they must start to make a connection. You can't help but make a connection to where does this food come from. Our hope was, and we heard that people would pull out the bacon they had brought and really finally make the connection. Where is the bacon? Oh my God, that pig that we were scratching his belly and he was lying on his back asleep as we were scratching his belly. Oh, that's where bacon comes. So we don't proselytize, but we definitely inspire. I think we expose people and it evolved. Pebble Cove Farm reflects our values. It's aligned with what we feel work best to us. And we love sharing it. We love sharing what we've done here. And we feel like the accommodations are beautiful, clean, lovely, and comfortable. While you're here, you can enjoy the garden. We have a beautiful beach. We have rowboats, hammocks, fire pit, hot tub. So many times we've heard over the years, parents say this is like the first time the kids aren't on their devices. They're running around playing with the animals. They're beach combing. We're all relaxed. We have families that have been coming every year. We do weddings. Wedding parties are coming with their kids now. It's just very gratifying.
So have you always been vegan? Some things that you said before made me think that maybe you were involved in some sort of animal husbandry. So I'm
Yes.
curious about how all of that came to be.
Yes, it was an evolution. And I remind myself when I get a little frustrated when I see people aren't quite on that.
Right.
I remind myself that we weren't always vegan. We were vegetarian for a long time, but I was very involved in animal rights as my parents were. We would go to protest, and I remember protesting outside. We lived near UCLA, anti-vivisection protest. But I think we probably went to dinner and I might have had a hamburger. So it takes time. But as adults, my husband and I, we slowly became vegetarian. But I will tell you that the milk and dairy and eggs was something that took some time. And as I said, we used to raise goats. We didn't eat them. And I would always make sure that no one else would eat them. We would separate the mothers and milk them. We had a few and we loved them and we were gentle and we weren't using machines, but we were still impregnating the goats. So they would have babies. So we would get milk. It started not to sit right, that we were doing this. We were forcing them to do this. And then we were taking the milk and we were drinking it. It was for the babies. So that was an evolution. When we started Pebble Cove Farm, our family is 100% vegan. We put granola and milk in the rooms, and I offer non-dairy options, coconut, almond, oat. People are sometimes surprised and they'll say, oh, well, we drink milk. I say, you're welcome to bring milk, but we don't serve it. But I would say 99% of the time, people say, oh, okay, I'll have oat milk. Or I've never had one. What do you suggest? We're exposing people to the idea. There is never been any pushback. Ever, ever. The other thing is eggs. We have chickens and we don't provide the eggs to guests. And that was something that was confusing to guests. I wrote up something that's on our website
Yes, I
explaining.
read that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which I think is kind of perfect, which is in a perfect world, you're on a little family farm and the chicken plops an egg and you eat an egg. Like, what harm is that? Of course, there's no harm. But you must remember that in the real world, if you're eating eggs in a restaurant, if you're eating eggs from a market, even if it says free range, I know I'm speaking to the choir, even if it says organic, that chicken where the egg came has probably had a pretty horrible life. We know what happens to the baby boy chickens when they're born. So I'm just gently educating people. And that's been great because I can't tell you how many people said, oh, I never thought about that. We buy free range eggs and we think like it's all good. I never thought about it, or I never thought about what happened to the baby boy chicks. So that feels really good. I would say
Yeah.
the egg thing comes up a lot.
I'm sure it does. I think people in the past 10 years or so, they've just become much more open to vegan alternatives. People understand that there is probably a non-dairy milk that is okay or a good substitute. So it's not quite the challenge mentally that people have to do now when they're offered soy or oat milk, whatever it is, but not dairy milk. They're not going to be so freaked out by it. So that's great. It seems like you don't really market yourself as a vegan accommodation. I know that you're on a lot of great websites for vegan hotels and things like that. That's how I got to know about you. But it seems like you are very welcoming of non-vegans as well and probably get lots of non-vegan guests. Is that fair to say?
Yes. Well, I'd like to market. I still feel like we're the best kept secret. Like, I want the vegan community, vegan travelers to know about Pebble Cove Farm. But I would say that is true. I have vegans come all the time and they're thrilled. The majority of people are not. They're here for the farm and the animals and the garden. And being here, in a way, it's like pretty wonderful because I'm exposing all those people to this way of life.
Tell me a little bit more about the accommodations themselves. You say they have a kitchenette. So is it more of like a self-catering kind of setup? Or do you provide a breakfast or maybe an option for dinner? I'm curious about that.
Yes. So all our accommodations, their suites or cottages, have a kitchenette or even a little kitchen. When we were creating Pebble Cove Farm, I always thought I want to create somewhere I would like to be. I like my privacy. I'm not a person where you come down and you're kind of forced to sit with other people. I wanted people to have some autonomy and privacy. So what we've developed is every accommodation has a private entrance. Some sleep 3, some sleep 4 people. They all, of course, bathrooms, a sitting area, and a kitchenette. I provide granola, non-dairy milk, a beautiful basket of fun, organic, vegan snacks, locally roasted coffee, organic that's roasted down the street, and some kind of juice. And then people can pick, like right now, raspberries in season. So you can pluck a bunch of raspberries from our garden. We have beautiful blackberries and put them on the granola. So that kind of sets you up in the morning. Then we have barbecues if you want to get food somewhere else. Our garden is just amazing. There's probably 40 vegetables in there now. Every kitchen is equipped with like basic pots and pans and utensils. So you could do beautiful stir fries or barbecue the zucchini. We have a communal hot tub, fire pit, and of course the beach. It's wonderful. At night, you'll see families sitting around the fire pit, getting to know each other. We have 4 acres, so there's plenty of room to explore. And we have families that met when they were on vacation and now come every year together to meet up.
Oh, I love that. Well, without a doubt, it definitely seems that your accommodation is the place to stay on Orcas Island. So let's talk about why people would want to go to the San Juan Island or Orcas Island, because it is a little bit harder to get to. Mentally, we think, oh, there's a boat, and then we like put it in the too hard basket. So maybe let's talk about how to get there. First of all, I'm sure there's a few different ways. Can you talk a little bit about how you can get there from Canada and from the United States? Tell us how long it takes, where the cars can go on these ferries, and then give us a sense as to like how people get around.
Yes, love to. So we're an island. There is no road. So you need to take the ferry or fly here. It is a little effort, but that is why Orcas is so pristine and so beautiful, because we don't have a highway. We're going to be limited. We're never going to be overcrowded because we're limited by how many people can take the ferry and how many people can fly here. The ferry is from Anacortes. Now, if you look on the map of Washington, Anacortes is sort of equal distance to the north Vancouver, the city of Vancouver, and to the south Seattle, where Anacortes is about an hour and a half from each. You take a ferry, the San Juan ferries, they run 3 or 4 hours a day. You do need to make a reservation. That's one way. The ferry services 4 islands. There are hundreds of islands in the San Juans, but 4 are serviced by the ferry. And only 2 are really tourist oriented: Orcas Island and San Juan Island. San Juan Island is bigger, it's more touristy, it's more developed. Orcas has, we call ourselves the gem of the San Juans. It has kind of a funky artist hippie vibe. It's a little more progressive, alternative. It's hilly, so we have a lot of topography. About a third of the island is Moran State Park. Gorgeous, incredible hiking. The highest peak in the San Juans is Moran State Park. The very top is Mount Constitution. And from there, you can literally see hundreds of islands. Pretty spectacular. So that's very special. And there's several gorgeous lakes in Moran State Park. Actually, right behind Pebble Cove Farm is Turtleback Mountain. And we have a beautiful hike up there. One way to get to Orcas is ferry. The other way is you can fly. There are scheduled flights from Bellingham, which is a city north of Anacortes, very close to the Canadian border. There's scheduled flights from Seattle. The fastest way is you get to Seattle and you hop on a little plane and get to Orcas and rent a car here.
You can rent a car on the islands.
We have, yes. So
Oh.
that's kind of the fastest way. It costs more. Or you fly into Seattle and rent a car and drive up to take the ferry, or fly to Vancouver and drive down. Those are the 2 biggest cities. We do have car rentals, several on the island. We have about a 5,000 year-round population. Of course, it swells in the summer. Things we're known for, the San Juan Islands: whale watching, kayaking, hiking. We have a wonderful Saturday farmers market. We have live music on the weekends in the park all summer. We have a lot of music. We have a wonderful, in August, an artist studio tour where all the artists on the island open up. We have a beautiful garden tour every year. We have a cider fest. 4th of July is really, really fun. We have a small town old-fashioned parade, lots of activities. We have a huge library fair, big festival in August. We have a summer solstice parade. We have an incredible, there's 6th or 7th year Orcas Film Festival, which we're like really making a name for ourselves. So lots going on. Our town, East Sound, is very quaint. Also want to mention my favorite restaurant in town, Wild Island, is open for breakfast and lunch. And that's, I'd say, the most vegan friendly, lots of vegan, very fresh, homemade from scratch. Also want to give a shout out to Mike's Cafe and Winery in Friday Harbor. So that's the other island you can visit. You can actually walk on the ferry. There's an inner island ferry and walk on. You don't even have to take your car and walk around their little town. That's a 100% vegan restaurant. And that's one of our favorites. So we'll often just take the ferry over for the
What island is that?
That's San Juan Island, the other kind of touristy one.
I'm looking at my map over here to just get my bearings.
And I just want to mention that because it's 100% vegan and it's really wonderful. Mike's, I think I sent you a link for that.
Yeah, I'll put those on the show notes.
People do come year-round to Orcas, but it's primarily spring, summer, fall. I would say spring and fall are also really wonderful times to be here.
Something I'm curious about as well. It seems, if I'm reading this map correctly, that you can take a ferry from Vancouver Island too. Is that correct?
Well, not right now. They
Oh,
haven't run it for the last few years. We're hoping they will resume it. But right now, no. So, in order to get to Vancouver Island, you'd have to fly or go up to Vancouver, the city.
right. And then drive down to Anacortes. Is that right?
Well, to get to Vancouver Island, you have to take a ferry from Canada now.
Of course, yes. But if we
Right.
wanted to take a ferry to you, we would have to go via the mainland US
Okay,
now.
from Anacortes.
Oh,
Hmm.
I wonder if the closing of the ferry was due to COVID.
It
Something else?
was.
It was.
I'm on several tourism boards and travel boards in our chamber. We are hoping they will resume.
Tell me a little bit about what the wildlife is like in the area. You mentioned whales. I'm very lucky because I live close to the Howe Sound, and recently we went and hired a little boat, just like a regular small boat, and we could not believe we got to see orcas in the Howe Sound. It was an absolute thrill to see them. So tell us a little bit about like the orcas and maybe any other animals that you see, something that's quite popular in the Sunshine Coast, which is not such different geography to what you're talking about, is like you can see phosphorus in the water as well. I'm curious about whether that's possible too. So
You
what
can
is
see what?
phosphorus?
Oh,
Wait,
I'm not schooled in that, but I have had guests get all excited about that and go out there. So I guess we do. I
right.
must say, this is not my expertise, but I know if you've never been whale watching, it's pretty incredible. It's amazing thing to be that close to these gigantic animals.
Can you tell us what a whale watching excursion is like? Because I'm sure there's the orcas, but then there's other kinds of whales as well. Because we have a similar thing in Vancouver Island. You can go and do whale watching excursions. It's fun.
Yeah, again, this isn't my expertise, but we have several whale watching companies on the island that will take you out. They all communicate. So when one of them sees one, they all come over there. We are all acutely aware we're on an island. And when you live on an island, you think about where your trash goes, right? Where the chemicals go. They go in. So and the tourism industry is very concerned about protecting what we have because we know it's so special. And the whales is something that's very important. We have very, very restrictive regulations about how close boats can get to the whale. So I always want to reassure tourists because I know a lot of tourists are concerned about that. Like maybe that's not an okay thing to support, but it is. It's okay. As a matter of fact, a lot of times it's the whale watching boats that are regulating private boats getting too close, and they'll call them and call the Coast Guard because they have to keep a certain amount of distance. So I can just tell you that it's a wonderful thing to do. There's several companies on the island that do it. I think you can do half or full day excursions.
Wow, that sounds awesome. And what about bears? Do you happen to have bears on the island? The reason why I
Bears?
ask is because in Vancouver Island, we can go and see the bears on a similar kind of tour when they go to the beaches and they're lifting up all of the rocks to look for various snacks.
No. So we don't actually. It's funny you say that because a few years ago we did, and it was a big deal because it swam here somehow.
Wow.
We don't have bears. We have deer, raccoon, otter, seal. What is amazing about Orcas is we don't have bugs. In the summer, we don't have really anything to speak of. You don't have to use repellent. We don't have anything poisonous. We don't have poisonous snakes. We don't have any poisonous plants. We don't have any poison ivy, poison oak. I always like to say that because hiking is just such a wonderful thing to do here. And as far as I know, ticks are not an issue here as well.
Wow, it does sound lovely. I'm sure there's a lot of activities. You mentioned hiking and you mentioned kayaking from your property. Can you tell us a little bit about that in terms of what type of kayaking can people do? Are there guided kayaking opportunities or canoeing opportunities? Because it's the open water. Some people might feel a little
Right.
bit cautious about just going
Sure.
off by themselves.
Sure. Good question. There are several kayaking companies on the island that will do guided tours. However, on our farm, we have a rowboat always on the beach, and then we rent kayaks and you're on your own. But Our cove is very, very protected, and where we have islands all over in front of us, and right in front of us is another big island. So it's very, very protected. It's pretty wonderful. There aren't currents. It's a very safe place to go off on your own, even if you've never kayaked. I go swimming. I go in the water every day. Other parts of the island that are more exposed in the open strait, it's a different story. But our bay is very calm.
How lovely. I'm guessing the beach is very full of life. I'm thinking back to a time when we were in Tofino in Vancouver Island celebrating
Tofino.
my in law's 50th wedding anniversary. And I was just blown away with the amount of life on the beach in terms of like anemones, starfish, and crabs. I could not believe it. Is it a similar thing where you are?
Yeah, it's very similar. So you know this area very well. As a matter of fact, we've been having some extreme low tides now. So there's an island we call Pirate Island because we put up a pirate flag on it, and you can walk to it right now. I'm looking out the window. Incredible, really fun beach combing. These like fuchsia colored starfish and dark purple starfish, tons of crabs. It's quite fun. Oysters, clams.
Yeah, it really is. Whilst I haven't been to your particular place, I'm kind of familiar with the geography of this area and the kinds of environment that it is. Just such a nice place to go if you just want calm, quiet nature and to get away from it all. It really is something rather special.
There is also wonderful history, of course, the Native American history. We have a wonderful historical museum in town. My kids have found arrowheads on the water. We overlook Massacre Bay. There was a huge, brutal war between the Haida, the Canadian Indians that came down, and our Lummi Indians were our native, very gentle Indians. We look out on Skull Island, which is called Skull Island because the Haida Indians piled skulls on it. So this is a quite brutal history, but incredibly rich. The Lummi Indians were the native Indians here.
Yeah, that's something that I know just a tiny amount about the indigenous history for this whole area. Like I live on the unceded lands of the Squamish people, and then just north of us is the Lillooet people. Of course, Haida Gwaii is much further north, but there's such a rich indigenous history in this area. And I'm really pleased that there's the opportunity to learn about that in the Orcas Island too. I feel like, generally speaking, in this part of the world, that there are lots of opportunities in which to do that. I think it's really cool. Well, Lydia, I absolutely cannot wait until we can schedule a visit to come back down to Orcas Island and definitely check out your accommodations. It just sounds absolutely perfect. Thank you so much for sharing all about this remarkable place in the world. Before you go, would you mind telling our listeners how people can find you and maybe book a stay in one of your many different kinds of accommodations?
Yeah, fantastic. So our website is pebblecovefarm.com. Instagram is Pebble Cove Farm. Facebook is Pebble Cove Farm Inn. My phone number is 360-622-6460. The website has lots of information, photos, great videos. We do weddings here, so we have like really fun wedding videos and photographs. I think that's how you can reach us, and we're on Orcas Island, Washington.
Love it. Thank you so much, Lydia, for taking the time to talk with us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.